Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good night. Hope everyone's doing well, hydrated, happy, and excited to talk about Magic the Gathering, because I'm excited. Now, today we're going to be talking about some new exciting changes to the decks that we love, Belcher, Oops All Spells, maybe not so much, and some sad things that are happening in the meta, in the community, that are making us maybe a little bit unmotivated to play the decks that we love, and the only deck I can win with, because I'm not actually a Magic the Gathering player. I'm a combo player that doesn't know how to do anything else except, win the game through sacred, scary strategies. Welcome back to the Solitaire the Gathering podcast. And I'm joining you here from Canada. My name's Sharif, also known as Micrograms on the internet. I'm joined by my co-hosts and friends, Magic the Gathering players who swear they can play Magic the Gathering, but I'm not really so sure. Would you guys like to tell us where you're joining us from? We're all across the globe, coast to coast. Robert, would you like to start us off?
Sure. I'm Robert, or Bob49. I'm in Austria, and I can also win with fair decks.
Hello, I'm Riker. I'm joining you from the United States. My online name around the internet is Dredge the Bed. I've been playing a lot of Oops, and I love Oops. And I'm going to pass it off to our other resident Oops player, Sam.
Hello, guys. Sam, Ashanti, known also in Magic Online. Here from Argentina, and really happy to convince Riker that Oops All Spells is better than Belcher.
I wouldn't say that now, but I do like the deck.
All right, we'll save the fighting for later. Now, first off, New Capenna. This is the set with gangsters, with mythical essence that is safe for work and safe for kids and safe for your LGS. Now, there's also magical cars, limousines, all that sneaky stuff, and we love it. And there's also a few little cards that are going to change our list, but we're going to talk about that later. First, let's talk about some new introductions to some other kind of combo-ish decks that might actually excite us a bit. The first one being a card called Luxure, Gada's Gift. If you guys want to pull this up, I'll read it to you in my silky sweet voice. This is 1 mana. It's an artifact, legendary artifact equipment. It's mythic. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each counter on it. Equipped permanent isn't a planeswalker and is a creature in addition to its other types. Loyalty abilities can still be activated. That's parenthetically. Equip planeswalker for 1. Equip anything for 3, or equip something. Just equip. Anyways, I don't know how to play Magic the Gathering anyways. It doesn't really matter. So this is going to be an introduction to probably Stoneblade and, Devoted Druid, of course. So which one of you guys like to jump in on this and tell us what you think is going to be interesting about this new strategy in Devoted Druid?
So yeah, I've heard a lot about it. But for my sake and probably our listeners' sakes, how does this work with Devoted Druid? I'm asking for myself too.
Okay, so things are happening. I can see Robert is excited to tell me that he's a better Magic player than I am, but I'm going to cut him off, okay? I'm going to cut him off, and I don't care. So here we go. So Devoted Druid has this little nice ability. It's, if you guys don't know Devoted Druid, I think it's 1 in a green, 1/3. Tap to add green, and then untap by adding -1/-1 counter to it. So if you equip this thing Devoted Druid, it gets +1/+1 for each -1/-1 counter on it, which means it's got no counters, or it's got no debuffs or buffs on it at all, which means it can untap and tap infinitely for funny amounts of mana. So you can end the game with your pleasing of choice, probably Finale of Devastation, I think, is the way they did it. But yeah. Anyways, I don't know how excited the rest of you guys are. Robert, are you excited?
Yeah, I think this deck could develop into a new deck, or at least an evolution of the previous Devoted Druid deck. It's particularly exciting that this is an equipment, so it can be tutored with Stoneforge Mystic, and it's a 1-mana artifact, so it can be tutored with Urza's Saga, and so this should make it far easier for the Devoted Druid deck to find one of its pieces.
That's right. Previous Devoted Druid variants were relying fully on creatures, I believe. So this is a bit of diversification. So they get to play the Urza Saga game. They get to play the Stoneforge Mystic game, which gives them a bit more stability and nuance to their setup. Riker, would you like to join in here?
Yeah, I was thinking, so if they're moving away from creatures, can this package work with Viridian Longbow? It pings anything and untaps, right? You can just keep pinging and untapping?
I was thinking about this one, yeah. And the other card that I'm looking for was Altar of Broad or something like Off the Broad.
Altar of the Brood?
Yeah, correct. So if you connect the gift card with Saheli and you bring a card, if you bring Saheli down every time, then it will mill. So this is another way to win.
It is a way to win. I don't know if it's a better way to win, but it is definitely a way to win with that.
What I'm just trying to say is, if we have a lot of different, like, 1-mana artifact with Urza's Saga, of course, we have a nice package that we can work on.
Yeah, I definitely agree that this is an interesting card that can spice up a few different decks that have maybe been needing a bit of help to get back in the game to be a little bit more competitive. So there's also another little interesting Planeswalker, Vivien on the Hunt, which is a sort of a birthing pod effect that I think can do some sort of quick combo with Planebound Accomplice. I'm not too familiar with it, but Robert, are you familiar with this combo and how it executes fairly quickly?
So Vivien on the Hunt wins with any free drop. One example of that is Planebound Accomplice, which has the advantage of bringing Vivien on the Hunt very quickly into play. So you bring Vivien into play, plus her, sack a free drop to get Felidar Guardian, which flickers Vivien, giving you an extra activation. Then you activate Vivien again, sacking Felidar Guardian, getting Karmic Guide, which reanimates Felidar Guardian, which flickers Vivien again. Then you sack your Felidar Guardian again, because you have another new activation. This time you get Kiki-Jiki Mirror Breaker, which copies your Karmic Guide, and lets you reanimate Felidar Guardian again, which combos out with Kiki-Jiki for the usual combo.
Now, I know that's a lot of words, but I trust you. It's a new combo, and maybe it's going to be playable, maybe it's not. Riker, what do you have to say on this matter?
Just jumping in here. So the only difference from Vannifar is you do it on the turn it enters, rather with Vannifar you have to wait a turn. Other than that, it sounds a lot like the old Vannifar decks. And if I'm wrong, I might be wrong about that, Robert. They're just slightly different cards in Vannifar versus what these lists will turn into, right?
They are fairly similar. The main difference is that Vivien wins on the spot.
Vivien is also 1 more mana than Vannifar too, I believe.
2 more mana.
2 more mana. That could make a difference. All right.
Yes, so indeed, this is perhaps too cute for Modern, but we shall see. Time will tell. Now, let's get to the real interesting, the real juices of the matter here.
Do we get to talk about my favorite, Goldhound?
Oh, okay, sure. We can talk about Riker's favorite bad card. Here we go.
Everybody's hating on my Goldhound, all right?
Okay,
it's
you
a
want to tell us
wild...
about Goldhound? Yeah, go ahead.
Goldhound is a creature. It is 1 red. It is a 1/1 with first strike. It blocks Ragavan, okay? And it has the ability of you can sacrifice it. You have to tap to sacrifice it. That's the catch. To add 1 mana of any color. It's a wild cancer that blocks Ragavan, and all my co-hosts hate it so much. When I first brought it up, they're like, all right, maybe you can test it. And now they're all like, card's going to be awful. But just you wait. I'm going to be blocking so many Ragavans. But in real talk for the card, it's I think I could just see it as a one-off in my flex spots. If my opponent sees it, they're going to be... they're going to be in a mindset where they're going to want to keep in removal, which is generally good for Belcher. You know, all my co-hosts are laughing at me, and I hate all of you, but I'm going to try the bad card, and just you wait till I 5-0. Yeah. I put a Kozilek in the 5-0 dump with Belcher. I can put this in the 5-0 dump.
Yeah, your opponent sees the gold and he shivers. He's like, I got to remove it. I got to get rid of it immediately. This 1/1 menace is going to ruin my life. So that's the mindset of our opponents. But guys, I have an offer that you can't refuse. That's a pun, because the next card is called an offer you can't refuse, which is actually going to be making a pretty large change in our modern Belcher deck. And Robert, would you like to tell us why this is better? And also maybe we're going to touch on some of the nuances, some of the pros and cons of these new additions.
Sure. So an offer you can't refuse is an instant for 1 mana. That's a blue, and it says counter target non-creature spell. Its controller creates 2 treasure tokens. So with Belcher, we often had a problem that when creating our piles, it's difficult to go from 1 mana to more than 1 mana. Until now, we have used Pact of the Titan to make a token and Infernal Plunge, which is 1 mana, second creature make 3 mana, to get to more than 1 mana. Now, this had the disadvantage that both Pact of the Titan and Infernal Plunge are otherwise pretty bad cards in the deck. But now we get to use an offer you can't refuse, which is already a counter spell, that makes more than 1 mana in combination with any free spell. We think that the optimal card for this is Noxious Revival. So rather than having Pact of the Titan and Infernal Plunge, we have Noxious Revival and an offer you can't refuse, both of which are cards that are otherwise useful in our deck.
Yeah, it does change it a little bit too with how our deck configuration is. I remember when we first saw this card, our Discord went nuts. People were going crazy about this new card and how you can still win on turn 3 with it. And the biggest concern we have for it is that your Ragavan package is a little different now because it's a 7th card in your Reforge pile, which means you can't just go double Reforge. I think it's definitely still going to be worth testing. Just having the cards be generally better is important. It's also important to note that we cannot do a turn 3 Pyromancer's Ascension win, not that I know of, if we're doing offer and a free spell.
No, we can still do it, but we don't have a Pact of Negation backup for it anymore.
We don't have the Pact of Negation backup, that's different. So we can do it, just no Pact of Negation. So I was mistaken there. What free spells have you guys been wanting to pair with it? I know we've talked a lot about Noxious, but I know people like Sharif have tried, options like Chalice of the Void.
Right. So I tried Chalice of the Void, and I think I played like 3 or 4 of them in the 75 just to see if it actually does useful things against Cascade and like sometimes Murktide or Grixis. And it was not like totally horrible. It was totally playable because you have like the regular Belcher Shell, except you have a few other tools that maybe will make your opponent cry a little more than usual, which is nice. But in terms of including it for the an offer you can't refuse pile, it's totally doable. It's a 0 mana spell. It's probably worse than Noxious Revival if you're not already playing Chalices, because if you draw the one, it's kind of awkward. I mean, if you draw the one either way, it's kind of awkward. But in terms of overall card quality and consistency, probably Noxious Revival is good. It's like just in itself a really good card that should just increase the quality of our deck overall, playing those previously bad cards.
I can jump back in on this unless it looks like Sam's got something. I'll let you go first, Sam.
Okay, like Mishra Bubble seems like super easy as another choice. You can have a card draw, so it's literally not like a dead card by itself. And Gutshot would be another choice that we're already playing, like in the sideboard. All the options. The only thing that perhaps happened to me right now when I'm like taking into account that we're already dealing a lot of damage to ourselves, plus the damage that we probably will do with Noxious Revival. I don't know if it's like really relevant, but it's still 2 life plus all the life that we take down by ourselves with the Bolt Lens. So if I need to choose something that wouldn't take life, then I would choose Mishra Bubble.
Yeah, definitely the Phyrexian mana is going to be costing us a little bit more than for paying it for 0. 2 life is going to make a difference in some matchups, so we're definitely going to have to see where that lands.
Another option could be Engineered Explosives among the non-life playing cards.
I could see EE in the side as a sideboard option now. We have more, benefits things that encourage playing it when we have an offer. One thing I haven't really thought about too much was the fact that in a lot of matchups like Murktide or decks that have a lot of counter spells, we tend to take out Packed Plunge. This with this new package, that can highly influence how we sideboard now. And would you guys still be going to offer Noxious for sideboarding options, or would you be sideboarding other stuff out?
I mean, in general, these are cards we could board out, and I think they are also cards we will, in general, board out together. However, against Murktide, I think both Noxious Revival and Offer are really good cards to have, and I wouldn't board those out.
Yeah, I agree in terms of returning a card that's just been countered or countering a counter that's countering something you don't want to be countered.
So, okay, that's a good answer. But Riker then is asking, what will we take out? Like,
Yeah, because the offer still has value.
Yeah, these are two cards that needs then to be in our list. And yeah, basically, what are we going to take out?
So I would take out Ironcrag Feats just because they are anti-synergistic with your counterspells, and you will probably need to defend your Belchers with counterspells.
Okay, yeah, that seems fair. And we can still play Pact of the Titan, right? If you want to play it, or is that it isn't a possibility? I know it's not a good card or a good option, but
if you really want to,
we need to win, of course, at the same time.
Well, so that's the new cards that are going to be shifting up our deck a bit. Let's talk about how we're actually going to be casting these cards, because this is a blue and Belcher is a green and red deck primarily. So we're actually going to be shifting around our lands. Riker, would you like to tell us about how we're shifting our lands around to make this work?
So we're going to be playing 4 Seagate to be able to cast the offer, because when we do our Reforged files, instead of putting a red land in to Pack Plunge, we now have to put a blue land in to offer free spell. I think a big concern for that now, though, is if we're doing 4 blue lands, we could be going down all our Emerias, our white lands, because they no longer have a need. But you might be asking, well, if you're taking out Pack Plunge and your Emerias, how else are you going to win the game? Through, say, Leyline. And I think a big thing that Bob introduced us to was Reforge can be a kill, and I'll let him explain that.
Sure. So if you repeat casting Reforged, if you keep casting Reforged the Soul, eventually people will draw from an empty library and lose. So you have to make sure that that person losing is not you. You can achieve that by casting Noxious Revival over and over, so you can thicken your library enough that your opponent mills out first. You can also do this deterministically in a way that you put 7 specific cards on the top of your library with Noxious Revival, and then draw the 7 cards that you wanted to put on top with your Reforged Soul, and then you just keep going and put new 7 cards that you want on top with Noxious Revival, draw them again with Reforged Soul, and so on.
Now, I'm not crazy, but that sounds totally unreasonable on Magic Online, right?
It probably is. I tried it once so far. I didn't manage it in time. I just tried it in a 1-player lobby, and it took me around 20 minutes until I got to the second wheel. I want to try it again a couple of times. I think with more practice, I can get it down to like 12, 13 minutes. And I think if I can do it under 15 minutes, it might be feasible, at least for me, to do it online. For the general population, it is probably not a good idea.
So anyone that is not Bob, I think for newer players, for Moto, leaving in 1 Emeria still might be a very important decision with deck building. That way you can still win with creatures.
Right, yeah, holding in an extra Emeria, as well as adding 4 Seagate to sort of maximize the safety of the deck and the ability to actually kill opponents with Angels through ley and line is something that we can also consider, because we won't technically need 3 Balagad recovery, because we can just go off with 1 Balagad, 1 Noxious Revival. So we're going to actually have to see if we miss the green source if we take one of those out. But that's definitely an option.
It's hard. I think it's really click intensive. Like you can make a lot of errors even if you're like trying to put like you can do it faster or you can practice it as Bob is doing it. But you will really need to consider if you're going to go down with this strategy, if there's perhaps a ley line of Sancticity, or perhaps it's just better to add also a Force of Vigor, eventually draw it, cast it, destroy the ley line of Sancticity, and win with Spikefield as we have done it before. So it's up to you, I think. There are still things that needs to be like tested, like a lot.
So what does this mean for your average paper player versus your Moto player? I think a paper player can keep the list as is. They just go to 4 Seagate. You will be able to do the reforge, explain it to your opponent. Your opponent will probably concede.
Yeah.
For Moto, I'm definitely going to be trying an Emeria, see if the green land matters. But this is going to be the first time where my paper list and my Moto list aren't going to be the same, just because of, Moto's an ancient client and doesn't know how to work with some combos.
I will still try to make it work on Modo. I think this is possible to do, and I would hate to play an optimal list online.
You're going to have a great hand strength after that.
I already have it.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be joining you in that search to make things work with this new loop, because making your opponent draw infinite cards sounds pretty fun, even though it might be very clunky and click intensive indeed. Would you guys like to talk about some new escapades in the Oops All Spells territory? I saw you guys did a little bit of a co-stream in the community. If you guys aren't familiar, we have a nice little Discord here. You should be able to find the link in the podcast description. Would you guys like to tell us how that co-stream went?
Yeah, that co-stream was actually on Twitch too. We were both on Twitch, and it was great. The community was very active with us. That was the most active I've ever seen anybody that interested in Oops actually be with us, which was a shock. But it's definitely more Sam's child. I'm just here for the ride because I love Oops, but Sam is definitely trying Pioneer Oops, and I personally, I don't like Pioneer, but it's the Pro Tour format. We have to play it. We're gonna have to learn and just live with it. And that Twitch stream was so much fun being able to be there. I would love to do it again with him sometime and have you guys join us. But in regards to how that Pioneer Oops list went, I'll just let Sam explain.
So somebody suggested in the Discord to play Hourgrazer in order to ramp ourselves faster. And I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. And so I put 4 Hourgrazer and I was like, okay, game 1, Hourgrazer in my hand with Turn Timber. So I was like super excited. I played the Turn Timber, I played Hourgrazer. I wanted to play another land, but wait, I don't have any land in my hand. So
me and Sam learned a very important lesson that day, that play land versus put land are very, very different terms in this game called Magic the Gathering.
I see none of you played Amulet.
And so the rest of that league, we had vanilla O3s in our hand.
Yeah, it was super tilting.
But how were we winning with the deck in Pioneer?
In my opinion, and I'm still super positive with this deck because I don't think it's like super bad. Actually, I don't think it's bad at all. You have a combo normally on turn 4 or turn 5. I'm playing 10 dorks. I have like the 8 dorks that have hexproof, and I put 2 enchantments that ramps also. Solve the Equation is able to look for Destroy the Evidence. And with Destroy the Evidence, we destroy a land from ourselves. We can mill our entire deck because we don't have lands. And now I'm playing the old shell that had Oops All Spells back in Pioneer. So I'm putting all the Agadeems and the Silver Ghouls on play. I have this worm that shuffles again to the library and turn to the earth. That's the bad memory journey. So it's working. And I have a sideboard plan that's a kind of transformation sideboard. I take the whole shell out. I put a lot of discards and control and the Thassa Oracle and win the next game with the Thassa Oracle. You can choose both of them. It needs work, but it's not. I think it has some legs. It has some legs. And regardless that we went like 0-4 in this league, but still it needs work.
No, we won a match. We
won
did.
a match. Sorry, yeah, you're right. And then I dropped the league.
I did want to put this out there for those who are new to Pioneer and are asking, well, why aren't you just playing Balustrade Spy and Undercity Informer? Oops was a very powerful deck back in Pioneer's early days, and both those cards are now banned in the format. But Destroy the Evidence does something similar, so we have been testing that. I like some wacky ideas like Chromatic Order and Bring to Light. I might have to try a list myself, but I think I wanted to kind of segue us into Modern Oops and how we think that's doing. And I've been having a lot of success with Modern Oops.
Yeah, me too. It's super disgusting. The deck is like just winning. It's still like turn 3. I think it's right now. I think it's the fastest combo deck in the Glass Cannon shell that we right now have. Super consistent. It doesn't really suffer so much by a Boseiju. I received in some matchup even twice Boseiju and I still went off. So I really like it. I really like it. And the interaction with the opponent is, if you have something that is graveyard, good for you. If you don't, you will probably lose. Thassa Oracle's package is still winning a lot of games. So in my opinion, it's super solid. It's super solid.
And I hope Sam doesn't fly over here and slap me after I say this, but I have 4 Teferis in my sideboard of Oops All Spells, and I have been a big fan of Teferi in the sideboard. It slows down the deck, but it is a solid counter magic hate, and it can remove permanents. So, Tormod's Crypt, doink, no more.
Can you even cast it?
Yeah, so I've adjusted my mana slightly. I have adjusted my mana. I now have 4 Spear of the Suns. That way I can cast it. I've only had 2 games where it's been in my hand, and I have had a hard time casting it.
So what are you losing in favor of bringing Teferis into the list?
Silences.
Silences. Okay. And you're feeling good about this.
I have. I've really enjoyed Teferi. It's a good catch-all because it gets rid of Graveyard Hate and it stops counter magic. If it resolves, you're probably going to win the game. And it also stops Endurance, which I know Leyline does, but it's again, it's, it gets rid of all Graveyard Hate and it gets rid of counter magic being casted on your turn. Sam still doesn't like it, and who knows, maybe one day I'll get him to play it, just at least test it.
Okay, let's make something clear so that we're all on the same page. What I'm trying to say that is Oops All Spells at Belcher, they are real decks, right? So the shell by itself will make you win. You can play Teferi also in a Belcher deck, and now that we're playing some blue, we can also play Teferi in Belcher if we want to. So what I'm trying to say with that is, yeah, of course, it's Teferi is one of the best cards in Modern. So I don't think it's super bad. It's kind of, in my opinion, goes like against the essence of something like Glass Cannon. But yeah, it's a great card. If you play Teferi, it will stop Cascade, it will stop any like counter spells interaction, any interaction that the opponent has in your turn. So Otawara and Boseiju might be the only things that the opponent can still do. But this will don't stop Oops All Spells by winning. So yeah, I don't think that I'm not personally playing because it's a card that I personally really hate, and I think it should be banned. But that's something like just because of personal choice. Teferi is a great card, so it will work. It will work.
Yeah. Me and Sam, we both want Teferi banned, and we want Xanthid Storm printed into Modern. That just only seems reasonable, right?
What a day that would be.
Teferi is an awesome card, and we should definitely keep having it in Modern. At best, forever.
Okay,
Yeah, Robert's
fair
love
deck
child,
One of-
Teferi.
It's
Would you
one
like
of
to tell us
my
why you like Teferi so much? Because you've been straying a bit from our combo territory, and it's okay. We still, we don't hate you that much. We hate you a little bit more,
Oh.
but tell us why that's worth you playing this deck.
Sure. So, so I've been playing a lot of Emeria Control recently, which plays a playset of Teferi. It's a very fair deck that tries to outgrind the opponent.
Sounds like he's pulling up a list now. I can keep where it's going. So Bob top 8'd twice in the same weekend, I believe, with this deck. And I recall, I think I remember the day in that Discord when he was playing those events, he's like, wow, look at how much little time me and my opponent have on our time clocks at the end of every match. And that just feels so wrong to me. I don't know what happened, Bob, or who hurt you, but one day you just went, I don't want to play Belcher. I want to play Sun Titan.
So the thing is, I've faced a lot of Murktide, which is generally a bad matchup for Belcher, or at least not a great matchup. And so I thought, what really beats Murktide? I looked at my other decks. I looked at Amulet. Amulet also has a bad Murktide matchup, so I cannot play that. I looked at various other combo decks, all with bad Murktide matchups. And then I looked at Emeria, and Emeria has a good Murktide matchup. So I tried that. I started optimizing it, and it was actually decent. Yeah, and I have been having quite a bit of success. I managed to get 11th place in the challenge 3 times. Never 10th, never 12th, always 11th. Yeah. And so I've been working on that as well.
For those
11-11,
of you,
make a wish.
For those of you who do want to see that disgusting fair pile of a deck, I will be sure to get Bob's link in the description down below so you can see what we were talking about.
All right, so let's talk about something a little differently. Let's talk about the modern metagame and how it's favored for Belcher versus Oops. I don't really have much to say on the Oops matter, but I know that with the influx of Living End and a lot of Murktide, I think being definitely the prominent voices and challenges, mostly is going to sort of drive a wedge between the Belcher players and maybe make them a little bit less eager to bring the deck into more competitive events. Robert, you just played a recent challenge. Do you have anything to shed light on that?
Yeah, so I went 5-2 in that challenge, which is fine. I think it's somewhat rough. The Murktide matchup is a little difficult. I managed to win it every time, but I got lucky. And I wouldn't expect this to go on. The Living End matchup is very bad, and as long as that is very prominent in the meta, I don't think Belcher is that great. I think if you play it well, you can still play it. But otherwise, I mean, Belcher will always still go 3-2, but if you really want to win your challenges, then Belcher is probably not the optimal pick.
Now, talking about Oops.
Sorry,
Sam, sorry, go right ahead.
I think it's a super good league deck still. If you are not going to play challenges, and as Bob said, if you train yourself on Belcher, and if you play Magus of the Moon and not Bob because he doesn't play any Moon effect, then you have even more chances. But regardless of that, I'm very positive also with Belcher. I think it's and now, for example, this lately Jack Moth is having a lot of success, and that is something that, in my opinion, is a favorable matchup for us. There are some decks that are having success, and we are having a favorable win rate against them. Murktide, of course, is not the best either. Living End, I'm not going to lie against that. But there are other matchups that are very favorable for us, like 4C Soup also and other stuff.
Yeah, so Sam brings up a good point here. Yawgmoth won both the recent challenges, and that is very good for us, because if the meta shifts in a way that Yawgmoth becomes very popular, I could see us being a much more dominant force than we have been recently.
So here's my hot take on Belcher and Oops in the current meta. I will play Belcher in leagues, and I will bring Oops All Spells to a challenge. Now, I only say that because Oops All Spells does really good against the kind of graveyard hate that people bring in against Living End. Endurances or just the single-use graveyard hates. The Thassa's Oracle package really gets us around it. And I mean, this just may be my experience. I may just be getting lucky, except I'm getting lucky with Oops All Spells, unlike where Bob is getting lucky with Belcher. But I've been having some fairly high win rates. I think my last 2 leagues have been 4-1s. I had a 3-2, and then I just do awful with Oops whenever I stream it. But, you know, Bob is making fun of me right now for... I can tell he's making fun of me for playing Oops in a challenge. It'd be so great to put Oops in the top 8.
Not just you, in general.
But the thing I'm coming around to is I do like that Boseiju doesn't have as much as an impact on Oops as it does Belcher. Oops is is much more resilient to it. It usually ends up taking out our artifact ramp rather than our actual lands. And I don't discourage anybody to bring Oops to like a local tournament either. I think that if you can get your decent hands, you'll do really well at local tournament play. Oops, I feel with Living End seeing a lot more play, Oops is more viable in that matchup because your combo pieces are creatures, so Force Negation can't hit them, but of course Grief can still rip away your combo pieces. I don't know if my co-hosts have been seeing as much Rhinos as I have recently, but I've been seeing a lot of Rhinos, and I feel Oops is tremendously more favored against that than Belcher. Force Negation being Rhino's only form of strong hate doesn't do anything to Oops All Spells unless they hit our artifacts. And in general, I think Oops All Spells has this weird new breath of life in it, even though there's nothing really new with it. The meta has shifted to where you will still be winning a lot of games. I don't know if it's been the same with Sam.
Yeah, like what I like, I don't know if I really can agree with the challenge argument, but what I do agree is, like, every opponent or every archetype is going to dedicate some slots for each of the matchups, right? And it's not that like they will drastically raise the amount of slots because if not, you're going to lose against a lot of other matchups. So there might be, even because we're like falling into the sins of Living End, there are already like dedicated slots for this matchup, and it will affect Oops All Spells. But still, like as Riker said, a lot of the cards that are right now the best cards in the format, they don't really affect Oops All Spells. Like Prismatic Ending, March, Solitude. I don't know, the list keeps on coming, like Teferi, as he said, Force of Negation. These are all cards that will not bring the straight impact against the deck. Of course, Endurance, yes, but still, Leyline of the Void, it's not being played. So we have a lot of advantage against what we're playing, and again, a lot of people underestimate the power of Oops All Spells. It just, from one moment to another, if you're going to bring some really hard graveyard hate, then I just play a Belcher and I activate it on the next turn, and that's also a problem for opponent. I'm not saying it's the best tier 0 deck, not at all. It's not what I'm trying to say, but I'm still saying it's a deck that people need to like consider.
Respect.
Yeah, respect. They need
You respect it.
Yeah, correct.
The deck will win on turn 3.
Yeah,
when it can, and it's very consistent at those turn 3 wins. When I mention Oops All Spells being really good against the graveyard hate that is being played right now for Living End, it means that the graveyard hate that sees play right now is like Relic of Progenitus because it's still very good against Darcy decks, or Tormod's Crypt, or things, or Soul Guide's Lantern, Nihil Spellbomb, not Murktide. Oops All Spells can get around this by just having 1 extra mana on top of their 4 mana. Because if that Graveyard Hate gets popped while we go off, we pay 1 green, cast Memory's Journey, put Thassa's Oracle, and whatever else we might need to produce the blue mana back into our deck and just win the following turn. Versus Rest in Peace and Dothi Voidwalker are really hard Graveyard Hate against us, and we will struggle with that, but not a lot of those are seeing play right now.
Yeah, right. If they play Endurance, then you're still alive. You can just keep on playing and see if you draw another like Spy or Rogue and go off another turn. The worst matchup or the worst Graveyard Hate would be Leyline of the Void, because we can't. Right now we're playing Prismatic Ending for a removal, and it's really hard to get it on 4 colors. If people still decide to play Voidwalker or Rest in Peace, then we're in a good spot. Or even Graveyard Hate as an artifact.
Really nice to draw on the nuances and strengths and weaknesses on each of the different decks, and how Oops might actually be a better choice in the Living End Murktide. Well, maybe not Murktide, but Living End, dodging Force Negation because their main threats are creatures. That's definitely an edge that it has on Belcher. Also, just to reiterate, Challenge meta and League meta are pretty much different. I think that definitely Belcher, Oops, I think the contrast between Leagues and Challenges for Belcher is pretty great. So I would definitely not discourage anyone from jamming Leagues with Belcher. I literally paid for my Belcher deck with Belcher Leagues, so I don't discourage that whatsoever. So Oops in Modern, now let's talk about maybe Oops in Legacy and your guys' experiences with it. I know you guys you guys love every minute you have with that deck. I've tried it a few times and I fell flat on my face because I don't play Legacy that much. But tell us about that.
Me and Sam love Legacy Oops, and I really loved playing a league together with it. We had some really tough decisions in some matchups, which is really strange for a deck that just says, I win on turn 1, do you have Force of Will? Etc. But Legacy Oops, compared to most other decks or just combo decks in general in Legacy, is that Legacy Oops is all about winning on turn 1. You play really fast mana ramp into your 4 mana Spy or your Undercity Informer or your Balustrade Spy, flip your deck, bring back Narcomoebas, and then dread return the Thassa's Oracle. The deck is, again, very weak to spells such as Force of Will, Daze, possibly, and the other blue counter magic we see. But we have Xanthid Swarm or Pact Negation to try and fight it. The deck cranks out leagues so fast. You can get through 5 matches of Legacy in less than half an hour in some cases, and it usually stays positive. Me and Sam have been testing a lot of it. I think he's been playing a little more of it than I have at the moment. I'll let him give his thoughts on the list.
Yeah, losing to Daze is really frustrating. That's 1 mana. You really want to have it. But I started to play Chancellor of the Annex, I think it's the name.
I really like that. That looked really spicy, and I loved it.
It's like your own Daze. It's your own counterspell on turn 0, and it works on the play perfectly. And it protects your shell pretty well. So this is that's a card that I added recently, and I'm really happy with that. Yeah, I think that it's something like it's a deck that if you want to grind, you will have your experience will not be super familiar with the meta because you're not going to see a lot of cards from your opponent. It's not that you're going into a lot of turns with the deck. If you lose, and you just concede and go to the next one, as Riker said. But it's super powerful. In my opinion, it's one of the most powerful combo decks that I ever played.
Now, if I'm not mistaken, me and Sam are out here playing with no lands in our lists in Legacy. But what are you two playing, Sharif?
Oh yeah.
So I've been playing a deck called Lands in Legacy, which plays significantly more than 0 lands. I think 35, in fact. So I've picked it up last weekend, in part due to seeing Sharif play 8 Mulch, which is a very similar deck. And I decided to play it in a challenge, immediately top 8ing this challenge, going undefeated in the Swiss part. Yeah, it's a very interesting deck. You basically try to lock your opponent out of the game. It's very different to playing any modern deck because your lands are really everything. You just try to have the right land for the right matchup and try to tutor it out. And you use your cards in a very different way than you normally would in a game of Magic.
Yeah, I was testing a different version of lands, which uses Mulch and Winding Way. They call it 8 Mulch because the cards are basically functionally the same, which I think compared to traditional lands, I haven't played a lot of traditional lands, is a bit more explosive. It tries to basically just dump as many lands you can as fast as possible with like Mana Bond, like turn 1 Mana Bond, and the only cards in your hand that are non-lands is like Life from the Loam is definitely like the nut draw because you dump your hand, then you keep dredging Life from the Loam, and it just keeps going from there. So I definitely enjoyed the explosive aspect of that deck, and it was definitely a refreshing change, both in formats and in decks. That definitely I enjoyed quite a bit, but I definitely want to try traditional lands as well.
So I want to ask you guys, why did you choose to play lands, and why did you choose each of you? Like Sheriff already mentioned it, why he was choosing the Mulch version, but what's the thought for playing lands?
So I played because I saw Sharif playing it, but I've also played Amulet in Modern, so I was already familiar with very land-heavy strategies, and so it just looked like an interesting deck.
Now, I don't know how me and Sam going, hey, Bob and Sharif, you guys should play Legacy Oops All Spells, which has 0 lands in it, and Bob took that as, oh, I should play lands. I really don't know how that works.
Yeah, the contrast is interesting for sure. I found the deck because I actually saw it won a Legacy Challenge, which I was interested in. I was like, I saw a deck with Mulch in it. I was like, okay, I get to play Mulch. That sounds pretty sweet because I played this card in what was it? What was the set name? I can't remember. But I played it in the pre-release, and I was like, okay, I get to play this in Legacy and maybe actually win games with it. So that was definitely intriguing. And I was sort of, I wasn't interested by like playing Delver and Legacy. That seems a bit too Murktide-esque to me. So I definitely wanted something that's a bit different in playstyle to creatures and counters. So I think that's why it really grabbed my attention.
Lands is definitely super powerful. I don't know, like perhaps like more experienced players can tell me wrong, but the interaction that you have with lands is pretty zero. So when you keep on starting with wastelands and start playing like other kinds of things that makes you like win, like the death combo with the 2020. I hate it because I lost against that a lot of times.
Merit Lage, right? It's Merit Lage.
Yeah. Beautiful guy or girl. I'm not sure.
It's crazy.
Yeah, I did want to bring up, it's kind of interesting how Pioneer became a very big format, and somehow we just all went to Legacy. And Legacy is a very fun format. I enjoy it. I did want to mention for newer listeners, the reason we aren't talking about Belcher in Legacy is that it's a little more of a difficult combo deck to pull off versus when you have an option like Oops All Spells. 7 mana is a lot. But there's a lot of fun combo decks to play in Legacy, and if you do want to try another format that's not Pioneer or Modern, I highly recommend Legacy.
I think something interesting to note is I think Modern seems like the middle ground between Pioneer and Legacy. Legacy is a bit of an increase in power level, which I think is intriguing to a lot of players. It's definitely something that I enjoyed because a lot of cards in Legacy, they're just like straight up greater power level, and I feel like Pioneer is maybe a downshift from Modern in terms of the power level across cards. I'm not too sure. I haven't played a ton of it, but that's what it feels like to me.
With the announcement of Wizards, we're kind of like need to play Pioneer right now if you really want to start playing in a professional level. So that's something that, of course, you can see that all the prices of Pioneer cards starts to spike up really strong. So everybody's trying to adapt also to the format, and that's why I'm trying to have some fun with Pioneer. I do think that now that there's like more players like dedicating, even pro players are dedicating, they're finding some strategies that are super powerful, and Wizards will need to put an eye on it and see what is happening with the format if they want to keep it unhealthy. But yeah, Legacy is super fun, and also it's super affordable to play. Don't get me wrong. I don't want to say something like really bad, but there are a lot of decks in Legacy that are even cheaper to rent than in Modern. That's
Than in
crazy.
Modern.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Legacy Upsell Spells is only like 400 ticks, and that's 1,000 less than Modern 4C. I did want to mention something, and this is something I've been thinking about a lot. It's kind of important. It's kind of important to me. Modern is turning into Legacy a little bit, and it has me a little scared. And when I say this, I mean Legacy Delver has always been a very, very powerful deck and a strong presence in Legacy, and that's because they get really good blue packages, etc. Now we have Modern Murktide, which has been a very, very powerful deck, and I haven't ever seen it really drop. With Laris gone, Modern Murktide is just the best tempo option, and it's because, very much so like Legacy Delver, Murktide gets the best low-to-the-ground options in the form of Ragavan and Darcy, and then they can also just cast Murktides that is a flying 8/8 for 2 mana and hold up counter magic. I may be very wrong with this assumption, but I just wanted to see what you guys think about Modern might be shaping into a Legacy-style format.
So I think one difference is that Murktide doesn't have the optimal blue package, because the reason Murktide is so good is because it has the optimal red package of having the Ragavan and the Darcy, and then it has a very good shell to take advantage of those, while the Legacy version just has the Brainstorm Force of Will stuff. In general, I think Murktide is definitely beatable. 4C, for example, I think has a good matchup against it, and I think we will see Murktide always come in waves where it getting popular is the reason it becomes irrelevant, because people will find a way to counter it every time it becomes popular.
Do we see Murktide becoming a staple of Modern for the foreseeable future?
I think it already is.
And I think the biggest talking point about Murktide is that the deck is very powerful, but I don't think anything in it is ban worthy. I just think the deck is kind of peak power level for Modern.
I think the strategy is super like classic tempo. Drago, I put a creature, I attack you, I counter. And if you see like the last two challenges, like Murktide was on the 10th place, and in the other challenge, like 13th. So there are a lot of strategies that can, I'm not saying easily, but you can attack it from other, if you play like Jackmoth or Burn, I don't know. There are a lot of things that you can play against it. Perhaps it's pretty more like harder for us, like combo players, because our shell is big and we don't have like a lot of space to put. If we would have the possibility to play 10 Pact of Negation, for example, then it would be like very cool. That's not the point. We have like Pact of Negation and we have Veil of Summer, and that's it. It's not the same. So that's why we're like in a not favorable situation. But I don't think that like Murktide is a tier 0 deck. There are a lot of strategies that right now can handle the way Murktide is being played right now, in Modern at least.
Yeah, it's great to have that nuanced approach to analyzing one of the top decks in Modern. It may make us cry, but other decks will keep it in check for us, sort of like in the Animal Kingdom, you know. Anyways, so we're getting pretty close to closing thoughts here. I think we've covered a bit of interesting things. we had a few questions that we sort of went over already through our discussion, the podcast questions and answers. So I don't think we have much to touch on there. But to everyone listening, if you want to join the dialogue a bit more, feel free to always join the Discord. We'd be happy to have you. And yeah, we also stream on Twitch. All the four of us share an account. Hope Twitch is not listening. Maybe they ban us. I don't know if that's illegal. It's okay. They won't listen to this. It's okay. Anyways, so yeah, if any of you guys have any closing thoughts, say hello to the community, say goodbye to the community, and otherwise, I think we'll ship this one off to next time.
All right, I'll start with my my sign off real quick. I just wanted to mention that I still think Oops All Spells is a very viable option. I have a lot of fun playing the deck still, especially in Modern. It's still somewhat viable there, and don't be afraid to play Oops All Spells. I think that's the big thing with the deck, is that some people will just see it as a much weaker version of Belcher, and to some extent that can be true, but it plays a lot different from Belcher. Both have 0 lands, but both have very different strategies. I'm Riker, also known as Dredge the Bed. I love getting to be here with these co-hosts and to talk decks such as Belcher and Oops All Spells with them. If you have any questions for me specifically, it is Dredge the Bed in our Discord, and you can always @ me there. And I will see you guys in our next episode.
Yeah, so I think Belcher is also playable in the current meta. Maybe not ideal, but it's still certainly playable. And if you disagree, you can play Emeria. I'm also fine with that. Yeah, if you have any questions for me specifically, you can also ping me on the Discord. See ya!
Thank you always for listening us. If you are going to play Oops All Spells, make sure to not play Teferi in your sideboard. If not, you can play any other thing. Again, we're trying to improve. Also, I want to mention this, we're trying to improve a lot our podcast, so make sure to always stay tuned. We're adding some new invites that will be really relevant and have a lot of fun talking about other combo strategies.
Well, you heard it here first, folks. That's all we got for you today. I hope you guys enjoyed. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time.